So, Douglas Murray gets on Dutch TV and within seconds, he completely obliterates the host. We are talking Gaza, starvation, cold, hard facts. No shouting, no drama, just surgical precision. Let's roll the clip.
Douglas Murray, welcome to the program.
It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. I'd like to start with some news from this weekend, is that Israel has started a large ground offensive in Gaza with two goals: freeing the hostages and defeating and destroying Hamas. Now, a lot of people who have stood by Israel after October 7 currently have doubts, as I'm sure you've seen as well. They say, look, Israel's going very far, inflicting a huge amount of damage on Gaza, and this should stop. Even allies of Israel have said this. What do you think of that?
Which type of allies?
Which type? Well, I mean, Macron or Starmer.
Sorry. Oh my God. Hear that question. He just coldly said, which type of allies?
Which type of allies?
Which type? Well, I mean, Macron or Starmer.
Macron, who just last week welcomed the new leader of Syria.
As Donald Trump.
Hang on. Donald Trump has not yet had him to the White House. The very recently jihadist leader of Syria was welcomed by Macron in Paris, but currently Benjamin Netanyahu would not be allowed to Paris without a possible arrest under the ICC. So,
but does that disqualify Macron?
It's hard to see somebody as an ally who would arrest your leader, a democratically elected leader. That's a tough one for many people. I would think that if the Netherlands, if this country had been attacked in the way that Israel was on the 7th of October. I would like to think that if this country was sitting and had been attacked on the 7th of October and thousands of Dutch citizens had been killed in their homes, burned alive, raped, tortured, hundreds more stolen into captivity and held in tortured dungeons and chambers underneath the ground right by your territory. I would like to think that your friends, people like I would count myself, would defend your right to do anything you needed to get back your hostages and kill or capture everybody who carried out that terrorist attack. That's what Israel is doing, and to my mind, as I've said, since this conflict began, and having seen, I think, more of it than most other journalists, I think, I can say with certainty that there is no point in the war stopping until Israel achieves both of the objectives it's had from the start.
So even the manner in which it is conducting itself now, you say, should not be questioned?
Well, it can be questioned, of course. You'll question it, I'll question it, everyone will question it. Everyone in Israel will question it. But the point is that since the beginning of the war, the stated war aims of the Israeli government have been the same: to get back every hostage. Not just the ones who've been born abroad or who have dual citizenship or who are children who can come back in coffins if Hamas allows it, but every single remaining hostage. And secondly, to make sure that Hamas is utterly destroyed. Now, as I have also said since the beginning of this conflict, every conflict involving Gaza, Hamas, Israel, since the withdrawal in 2005, has ended in effectively a draw. Israel manages to, Hamas launches rockets into Israel, Israel sends its troops in, loses troops to try to stop it. They get to a stalemate because the international community and people in The Hague and elsewhere say you've really got to stop. And all they do is set up the preconditions for the next round of the war.
Which means that you say Israel should continue what it is currently doing despite all the international criticism?
Of course, in spite of the international criticism, because the international critics of Israel mainly don't know what they're talking about.
Now, listen to that. You see, no rage, no emotion, just pure data. While most of Twitter's crying, genocide, genocide, with no context, this man is pulling out facts like a librarian with receipts.
The international critics of Israel mainly don't know what they're talking about. And, by the way, would never behave as well as Israel has behaved if this happened to their citizens. I seem to remember that when, for instance, ISIS attacked the Bataclan and elsewhere in Paris, and François Hollande, quite rightly, with his allies in Britain and America and elsewhere, sent planes in to bomb the hell out of ISIS in Mosul and elsewhere. We did not spend very much time wondering about civilian casualties, did we? When we sent in our Kurdish allies to go and kill ISIS, we were not looking at civilian body counts. But just the point I wanted to bring to was this. There is, as I've said from the beginning of this war, no point in putting out 3/4 of a fire. There is no point in putting out 90% of a fire If you want to put out a fire, you put it out 100%. Hamas has to be put out 100%, operationally incapable. When that happens, the citizens of Gaza may have the opportunity to rebuild without the terrorists in charge.
Yes, but then they will still have to be alive. And as you are well aware...
Well, they're mainly alive.
Yes, well, currently there's also a lot of criticism, and I think rightly so, of the fact that Israel for now more than 2 months has withheld food, medicine, water, electricity from Gaza. And also those same people I just mentioned, Western countries, allies of Israel, have said you should not do this. And even generals within the Israeli army say famine is now really, really imminent.
It's not.
In Gaza. It's Israeli generals saying this. It's not me saying this.
I know, but I've seen the crossing points. I've seen the amount of food that goes into Gaza.
Not for the last couple of months.
Well, you'll know, by the way, that... Well, the Israelis have managed to make sure throughout the war that Gaza keeps electricity going, which is reliant on Israel. Amazingly enough, one thing Hamas didn't do whilst it was in power was to spend money on the energy infrastructure. If only they hadn't have used all that money for rockets and for murdering Jews, maybe they could have made an energy infrastructure. But still, throughout the war, the Israelis have given electricity to the Gazans. They have continued to allow all the necessary food into Gaza. If you go to Gaza and you see the citizens, they do not lack for food. In fact, many of the Gaza citizens, if you look at the amount of food that has gone in, even in recent months, it is more than the daily recommended allowance of the UN on food, that people need.
So, Douglas, how come then that the entire international community and also a well-known and good journalists say, look, there is a tremendously terrible situation. Well, even Donald Trump said a lot of people are hungry and suffering in Gaza.
Yeah, a lot of people are suffering.
Because Israel is withholding food and medicine.
It's almost as if you shouldn't vote in a terrorist group to govern you and then keep invading and butchering your neighbours.
So it's also the responsibility of the civilians.
It's almost as if there's a lesson to learn here, isn't there? I mean, I have managed all my life not to stockpile rockets in my house and fire them at my neighbours. I'm sure you have also resisted this urge.
No, I've not done
that. I treated you as too pacifist a Dutchman. But I would imagine you've restrained yourself from doing that. I've imagined that, like me, you've restrained yourself from breaking into your neighbours' houses and raping and burning them alive. There is a consequence from continuously starting wars against your neighbour and trying to annihilate them. Well, one other thing is, if you keep trying to annihilate your neighbour, which is what Hamas has tried to do repeatedly, you will pay a consequence. The citizens who you purport to look after will pay a consequence. And if Hamas had decided to build one bomb shelter in Gaza for the citizens, instead of building an entire tunnel network for their jihadist fighters and for their rockets, things could be different. But there's one other thing that has to be said. Show me one other war in human history where the side that has been attacked, Israel, is expected not to just pump energy into the place that has attacked it, but to keep allowing as much food as the citizens need to sustain them. Would that happen in any other conflict? I can't think of one historically. I've asked many historians if they can think of one. And this is the first conflict in human history where the side that has been attacked and tried to be annihilated by a terrorist group is expected to make sure that, among other things, as well as not harming anyone in the enemy territory, they make sure that the enemies in question are fully nourished.
Oh my God. You've got to clap for this man. You've got to clap for this man, because I myself have been asking this question. How can I be at war with my enemy and I'll be feeding my enemy, giving my enemy everything they need to survive, to exist, you know, to have a normal life, whilst they're attacking me and trying to kill me, trying to destroy me, trying to wipe me off the face of this earth. But I'm required by international law to make sure I put their nourishment, to make sure I put their welfare in my mind as top priority. Do you get my drift? Also, whilst attacking them, I need to make sure there are no casualties. Think about that for a second.
And this is the first conflict in human history where the side that has been attacked and tried to be annihilated by a terrorist group is expected to make sure that, among other things, as well as not harming anyone in the enemy territory, they make sure that the enemies in question are fully nourished and get their 5 fruit and veg a day.
Isn't that also because Israel, being the one democratic state in the region, should be held to a higher standard, could be held to a higher standard than their terrorist, terrible adversaries.
I agree. But
so we could ask Israel to maintain a position within international law, couldn't we?
Well, you see, the problem is that this isn't about a higher standard. It's about a higher standard. The standard that Israel is expected to operate on is not a double standard, it's a triple standard, as the Prime Minister has said many times. The standard that Israel is expected is a standard of warfare which is not just in line with Geneva Conventions, which it is, but is far superior to them. It is expected to behave in a way which the French army is not expected to behave in, that the American and British armies are not expected to behave in, that the Dutch army would not be expected to behave in.
And this is why, you think? Why do we in the West hold Israel to a higher standard than, as you purport, we would do with other countries?
Well, why are we sitting in a city where you allow maniacs on the streets to unbelievably spit on the reputation of this country?
Yes.
By hollering at Jews, by attacking Jewish sites, by screaming at Holocaust survivors when they go to open a museum in this city?
Yes.
Why is it that the name of your country, this country, has been so smeared? It's because there's a different standard. I think, I keep a fairly close look on your country, not as close as I'd like. I think that your streets have not been in turmoil in recent years over the civil war in Syria, the war in Yemen, the occupation of an EU member state in the north of Cyprus. I don't think from one year to the next the Dutch citizens, which is what is reported on the news as being, that the Dutch citizens come out and racially attack citizens of other countries. That's what the world sees in the Netherlands. This is what it sees in Holland.
Your answer is partially rhetorical, I assume.
No, it's not just rhetorical. It's partly rhetorical, obviously, because I'm using words. But it's not just rhetorical. You have to bear this in mind in a country like this. Why have you got on your streets people every week setting off flares, burning flags, screaming at strangers? You know, that's not Israel's problem. That's your problem. And it's a problem you've allowed to get out of hand.
You've written about this extensively before.
Exactly.
You've written about a lot of things. The death cult part about Hamas is also very interesting. But you've written about Western civilization and the threats to Western civilization. Do you think we could end on a positive note? Meaning, not only what are the negative things that are attacking Western civilization, what makes it so special in your view? What makes it worth fighting for, so to speak?
Well, to my mind, and I'd imagine to most people watching's mind, although not everybody, I think this is a great civilization which has given us great things. It's given the world great things. It's given us great culture, great learning, great advances in every field of science, of liberty, of political freedom, of religious freedom. I could list it and go on all day. But these are things which we are at risk of losing. And there are people on your streets, as there are on the streets of America and the streets of Britain and every other Western country, who always attack Israel first but never last. And I want these people to be told very clearly, if you do not like it here and want to be part of the Western society, go somewhere else.
Oh gosh, I got to clap for this man. I got to clap. It's not ended yet, but I just got to clap. This man definitely knows his facts. He's done his research. Wow. Wow. Pure knowledge out here. He's spitting truth bombs.
First but never last. And I want these people to be told very clearly, if you do not like it here and want to be part of the Western society, go somewhere else. Right. There's a lot of unfree countries in the world you can have a happy, unfree life in. But if you want to join us and be part of us, welcome. But if you don't, it has to be made clear you go. But if you want to join us, join, and this can get better.
And that goes for everybody then? Everybody who's willing to adhere to the laws and the standards of this country?
In the same way that if I decided to migrate to Pakistan, I would be expected to abide by the courtesies of Pakistan.
Do you have any plans in that direction?
You know, I've been thinking about it. I prefer Amsterdam on a sunny day.
Okay. Well, thank you. On that note, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you coming on the program.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Wow. This was complete, total and utter obliteration. Douglas Murray came armed to the teeth, not with weapons, not with insults, not with violence, not with shoutings or drama, no propaganda at all, but just cold, hard facts. I mean, love Israel, hate Israel. If you're talking about humanitarian crisis, you better do your research. What I've noticed is that when it comes to Israel, the world is very quick to react, but really slow to research. This is why people like Douglas Murray shake up the narrative. He makes all these emotional arguments very uncomfortable. It's not about speaking louder, it's about being sharper, being armed with as much facts as possible. In the whole conversation, if you listen very clearly, you'll notice a lot of hypocrisy on the side of the West. Israel are expected to do well more than they should. Very well more. They are being judged by a different yardstick as compared to other countries. When when Great Britain attacked these terrorist countries, nobody talked about casualties. Everybody was fine. It was okay, so long as it wasn't Israel. But as soon as it is Israel, that is it. Everybody starts judging. Everybody brings out a lens. They're like, oh, you're attacking. Make sure there are no casualties. Oh, yeah, attacking your enemies. Make sure they're well nourished. I mean, like, what is going on? So, what do you guys think? Did Douglas Murray just cool the media, or was it cold and one-sided propaganda? Drop some comments in the comment section, guys, and we shall be discussing. Love and peace.
Oh, I love you more than words can say. You are me. Oh, you are the light that shines in my way. You are me.